Welcome to Talking Crop, the Goodyear Farm Tires podcast for farmers by farmers.
Hi, I'm Will Evans and welcome to episode 3 of the Talking Crop podcast brought to you by Goodyear Farm Tires. And today we're at Clayhanger Farm near Crewe and we've got a range of voices today because we're on a multi-generational family farm. We have Dennis, Rachel, Andrew and Emma. So we're going to start the podcast now. So who's going to answer? Tell me a bit about the history of the farm, how the family first came here, how many years you've been here. Tell me a bit about the farm.
Well, Dennis's grandfather bought the farm in 1923 from the Crewe Hall estate.
Wow.
Moved from Bangor-on-Dee.
No way, really?
Yes, he did. And we can sometimes think, did they bring the cows on the train or did they walk them?
Yeah, okay, that's my village, Bangor-on-Dee.
Yeah.
That is my village.
So they came here and there was quite a lot of children. They had a milk round in the village and ran a family farm. Then Dennis took over from his father. He actually took over when he was 21.
Yeah, okay.
But I met Dennis and because we've both been married before, we came back here in 2002 after buying his ex-partner out. So we started from scratch really in 2002 with a new herd and built everything up since then. So although it's a family farm, it's very much something that we've built together.
Wow. So Dennis, you've got Welsh roots then. Do you support Wales in the rugby or?
No, I don't. I don't watch any rugby. Never had time to go to them sort of places when I was young.
Right, okay.
Had to work really hard, and so I was brought up and don't regret it. But I have been a football fan as I grew older. Enjoyed that, watching Liverpool.
Good.
To finance this place though, Dennis used to milk 4 times a day. He
Wow.
milked twice here and then he milked twice for other people to bring
Wow.
in income in.
Every farming family's got a story. I mean, sometimes everyone looks at farming families and it all looks very rosy from the outside, but it's not always like that, is it?
Could have finished me, only for Rachel and standing by me, etc. It's would never recommend it to anybody.
He says nobody should get married till they're 35 because then you know.
I made a mistake there.
But one of my ex-jobs actually, while I was going out with Dennis, was I was selling milk quota
Okay.
for Right Manly as it was then, and used to get families coming in saying we're going to share the partnership with children and things. And in those days we used to say, just be careful, because we'd seen what happens if a marriage breaks up.
Yeah.
And that you can lose your business if you're not careful.
Yeah. So I'll bring you two in at this point then. You two obviously grew up here. Did you want to be farmers growing up? Do you ever see yourself being involved in the family business or did you have other interests?
When I was little, I used to milk cows, feed calves.
Yeah.
But I wasn't interested in farming at all. I wanted to be a car designer. That was the only thing that I was interested in. I did all my A-levels to do that. And halfway through my A-levels, I realised you talk about it being a vocation, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I changed. I went to Harper Adams, did a degree in animal science there, did a year out in Canada, and then worked as a manager for a farm up the Wirral for a couple of years. And then I was lucky enough to start working for Genus ABS. After a couple of years of trailing cars around the country and doing every old rubbish job, if you like, working my way up the ladder, I ended up being European breeding program manager for them. So I got to travel the world, see farmers all over the world, all over the UK, dairy farmers sourcing genetics for Genus ABS. So I did that for 18 years then in that role, and then I'm not a people person really. And it was a job that was all about relationships, and I found that tough, and I missed working with cows. And then the opportunity came to come home and be part of the partnership, which I felt really lucky to be asked. And I don't know if they regret that decision. Probably every day. And so being home since 2018, managing the cows.
Yeah, okay. You say you're not a people person, but well, first of all, I think a lot of farmers are like that, aren't they? Not naturally, but I suppose it gets easier as you to do that role with Genus, you must have had to develop those skills.
Yes, you'd say so, wouldn't you? I don't know. You could be the answer to that. What the bit that really stood out for me was as you travel around the world, farmers are all the same.
Yeah.
There's a certain sort of a breed. Even people that come into farming they have something in them, and you talk to them. It resonates with what they're doing, and they're going through the same struggles, but in different weather, different geography, different milk contracts, etc. But generally, it comes down to that inherent need to improve farming. In my role, it's improving dairy stock, and they're really passionate about it. And I found that easy to talk. I liked looking at cows all over the world and talking to farmers about them and how they wanted to develop that. So that bit was easy. And of course, the other we talked about sport before. Football is universal. It doesn't matter if you can't speak a word of their language. And I'm terrible. I can barely speak English, so it's always a steep learning curve. But as soon as you started talking about football, Premier League helps a lot. Yeah. But it was a great level learning.
Yeah, it's good for finding common ground, isn't it?
Yeah.
Emma, what about you? Did you grow up thinking you'd ever be part of the business, or would you have other interests?
Probably not. I had other interests. So I spent, in my youth, I was Young Farmers, YMA, which then became Young Breeders. So I did a lot of showing, lots of different things in terms of doing the fancy stuff around cows, but nothing doing so much as in the work. And then at school, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I started off wanting to be a nanny and a teacher and all this sort of stuff. And then I decided when I was doing my A-levels that I wanted to go more business studies route. I went to Harper Adams to do agri-food.
You're both ex-Harper, like me.
Agri-food marketing and business studies, and did a year out at Genus. So I started at Genus before Andrew did.
Yeah, okay.
So I went to their marketing department there to do all the pamphlets and everything they send out to farmers, and all the press releases, all that sort of stuff. And then before I'd finished at Harper, they asked me to go back. So I did a couple of years with them before I sort of had a bit of a change of heart and went to work for the NFU as their dairy advisor. Yeah. And then while I was there, I was approached by Tesco to lead their, they were just about to go into their direct sourcing. So I helped set up the TSCG, the Tesco Dairy Sustainable Group. I went around speaking to lots of farmers, bringing them all on board to Tesco to be in their direct pools. So I did that for 7 years, and then I was sort of getting married, having kids, and just started to think about actually what does the future look like. I very much, like Andrew said, you think about actually my upbringing was amazing. I loved being on the farm, I loved helping out. I wanted that for them as well. We were sort of, we couldn't really afford to live in London. We were looking at houses and stuff, and we went to both my in-laws and to my own parents and sort of said, look, we're thinking about moving somewhere a bit child-friendly. We'd like to come home. What are the opportunities? And my parents welcomed us with open arms and said, when can you start, sort of thing. And it was quite a good, it was good how it turned out, because obviously I'd just come home, just getting things into motion, moving my family here, and then Dad had his knee operated on, had sepsis, and then had a heart attack, and then hasn't set foot in the parlour since that moment. So it was very much like, well, here, you wanted to do some milking, here's all the milking. So yeah, it was quite eye-opening. It's been a tough, it was tough to begin with, because I very much didn't have any dairy farming background, business studies sort of thing. So I've come in with a brand new set of skills, and trying to lead people that sort of know a lot more about milking cows than I did. So yeah, it's been very much a steep learning curve these last few years.
It's when you said about your children and wanting them to grow up on a farm, and it's unbelievable how many farmers I speak to feel the same, whether like me. So one of the reasons I left school very early to be for farmer was I knew one day I wanted children and I wanted them to have a similar childhood that I had on a farm. But I also speak to other farmers like yourselves who've gone away from farming and then come back to it when they've reached that stage, and they think, actually I want my children to have, it's such a privilege, isn't it, growing up on a farm, I think. And
definitely a privilege.
Yeah.
I would say that if you do grow up on a farm and your plan is to go home on that farm, it should be obligatory that you go and work on another farm.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Elsewhere.
Yeah, I didn't, and I regret it, and I would encourage my own children to perhaps even do something you get it out completely for a few years and get another perspective and learn some new skills.
About seeing different ways of doing it, not necessarily. Even so, you come home and say, "Well, we're doing it the right way." At least then you see it in practice, and it starts to open your mind a little bit about.
Because farmers need to be more business focused now.
Yes.
We need to be looking after the staff. You need to be caring more for not just the animals, but for the people that work for you. And you do need to be. There's more paperwork. There's more things more business focused.
So Rachel and Dennis, at that point, when were you thinking? Before your children came back to the farm, were you thinking, actually, maybe 5 years we might have to sell it? Or did that cross your mind, or were you just thinking?
It was always on the horizon, wasn't it?
Although we were we were 20 years younger, 10 years younger, and fitter and able to do it. But it seems to have worked out really well how it's tied in that, I do the accounts, Emma does the registrations and that side of the paperwork, but we're kept pretty busy most days, aren't we, with that side of it. You do all the dry cows and just generally managing the business. Dennis does, he rings the contractors up and to spread muck and that sort of thing, and Andrew does all the genetics
and the feet. Andrew's nail bar.
So we've all got our jobs within the business, but we couldn't have managed without these two. By this stage we would have had to sell up if we hadn't have had to.
Numbers have gone up considerably because we had a TB breakdown. Really pushed us for 12
when
months.
we were just so many stock on because we just couldn't sell them. And it was a nightmare really, but luckily we went clear. And
So how many cows do you milk now?
we're down to about 300 now, aren't we? We were nearly 400 and
We're
it was over 400. It was stretching everything. And we've noticed everybody's sort of gone because there's more space, everything has more time to look after things. The cows are actually given more milk, haven't they, because they're not pushed as hard. And
So there's slightly less pressure on the cows and you as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing there is that you all have very quite clearly defined roles in the business. Is that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because that's not always the case in multi-generational family farms, isn't it? And sometimes lines get blurred, and that's how frictions start, isn't it?
And some farms don't involve the young ones in the decision making. I mean, we all talk it through what we want to do. More or
We all
less.
talk it through and then Mummy tells us what's going to happen.
That's always
You have to keep a very tight rein on the finances. But it is a decision, and we've talked to them about what's going to happen in the future as well, because would you want kids coming into farming at the moment? It's so difficult at the moment to plan ahead because you're worried about losing everything if the tax changes come that are forecast. You've just got to make so much provision, and they say, oh, you can gift it, but you can't then benefit from the gift, and we're not ready to retire. So it is very difficult.
The Talking Crop podcast is produced by Goodyear Farm Tires, lead in the field in farming innovation, reliability and performance. View our wide range of tyres at goodyearfarmtires.eu or visit the link in the description.
You mentioned the increase in regulation burden, and that is a thing. I talk to lots of different farmers, and everybody I think is a little bit challenged by that at the moment, to put it mildly. Even on my own farm, it's a lot to keep up with, isn't it? It feels like the goalposts are always moving, I suppose. And I would think in dairy farming, that's probably the sector of farming that's feeling that the most. Do you feel that's becoming too much of a burden? Or?
It has. We've sort of been talking about particularly the environmental side of things, what we'd have to do here to make sure we're compliant. So we're sort of making a move because we need to have less cows anyway. So that would make it easier for us looking after the slurry, because you have to have so much storage. So yeah, the burden is quite...
But we have been planning for years, because we put in a conservation area 10 years ago. And so we put trees and water and wildflowers, and we're putting wildflowers in the margins in the spring so that we can encourage more wildlife. We are very interested in that.
Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy doing that as well? It's something you like to do?
And especially as we are here, with the last green bit between Crewe and Haslington. Yeah. And it's important to keep that vibrant and a lot of wildlife about.
Yeah.
I think where the frustration comes is that all these regulations come in, and I'm going to be I agree with quite a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
We should be doing, looking after the environment we work in. Where the frustration comes in, that then imports come with nowhere near that level of regulation. Mm-hmm. So either deregulate us and go to the common lowest denominator, or regulate us and make sure that everything else that comes in is on an equal footing. Yeah. Because that's what keeps us competitive. That's if you want a vibrant agricultural community, they have to be and sustainable agriculture. The farms need to be sustainable, and if they're not, then you're just going to import it, export your morals, and I always think about it like the old days of no smoking, smoking and non-smoking on the plane. So the last 4 rows could smoke. So everybody gets to smoke. If we're
it's a good way of putting
if we're not reaching the standards where we import our food from, then the whole world is. It's not like one section is the UK and then they're all right. It's a whole world thing that we've got to think about.
Yeah, I think a lot of farmers share that frustration, don't they? It's something that I think even with some of the protests at the moment, it's not just about the tax changes. That's sort of the straw that's maybe broke the camel's back. It's on the back of a lot of unfairness in the supply chain.
I think that's really fair.
You mentioned, Rachel, that you are next to a lot of population centres, a lot of houses, a lot of people around you here. Is that an opportunity or a challenge? Or is it both? It's fair to say.
It's not as much of a challenge as we feared it might be. We got a bit of trouble during lockdown when there were kids with nothing better to do than to throw stones at cars going past and running heifers round and things. But Emma is one of the ambassadors for the NFU going into schools. And we've got a high school literally at the top of the road here, and you went in to talk to them, didn't you? And she was amazed that they didn't know there was a farm here, such a short distance away. The general public don't seem to react with the countryside at all, unless you go and tell them about it.
Our cows go across a very busy road. Daily and each night, and generally the public are really good because if you put your hand up to, they appreciate it. We can get 40 cars waiting in say 5 minutes, and none of them come back past. Only the odd ones abusive to you, and we don't want to alienate the public. We want. They're our customers and we want to be friends with them, and generally they're very good.
Yeah, I do think the vast majority of
None
people
of them
support us, don't they?
are nasty. Only the odd ones chuck the rubbish out, the McDonald's litter, etc.
We actually got somebody from the village came wanting muck for the garden last week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is something that's almost died out. It used to be a regular thing at one time. But
Do you enjoy that engagement side?
Yes.
Schools
No, I really enjoy going into schools. It's interesting to see. There's a few people, well, I guess that the kids that don't know what they want to do, and it's trying to give them some sort of something to feel passionate about and just explain what you do. And actually, the amount of kids that have sort of said, oh, I'd really like to get into farming, how do I do it? And yeah, they sort of, you come away feeling quite enthused about connecting with people and trying to explain what we do, and that the milk, all the produce, that stuff that they buy doesn't just get in the supermarkets. Obviously there's work that goes behind that, and explain all of that to them. No, I really enjoy that. One down the road was quite a challenging school. There were a few challenging people there, a few challenging students. But actually, when you sort of broke down what their issue was, it was more that they, just were sort of showing off in front of other people.
Yeah, okay.
But it's something that I think all farmers should do, to go into and connect to their consumer, because it's important that they know where their food comes from.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget, don't we? People drive past and they see these big steel frame buildings, and they don't. We've got nothing to hide, have we?
No.
I feel like we've got a lot to be proud of, and we don't need to shy away from engaging, I think, because people are interested and they do want to know, probably more than ever, where their food comes from, and if we don't tell them, then somebody else will, won't they?
It's a very dangerous place, farming, isn't it? And it'd be nice if more schools could visit farms, but the safety aspect of it, they've got to do such a lot to comply with it, really, haven't they? Because it's so dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're all busy, aren't we? Machines flying around, even pulling in here this morning. I could, you could see it's a very busy farm. Feeder wagon, and it's just. I know what you mean. And
the old days of when you milked 30 or 40 cows, the temperament of the cow was because it's managed completely differently. And these days, cows, if a cow lives in a herd of 300, 400 cows, they have a different mindset. They're a survivor, and that's what we want. We want cows that can look after themselves, which means they don't give two tits about people being in there. They will walk through you to get to where they want to go, that's what we want. We want cows that can look after themselves.
Yeah. Well, on that then, talk to me about genetics, because you obviously, with your background, you've brought a huge amount of expertise to the farm in that regard, or years of experience. years of experience. What has been your focus when you came back to the farm?
So. Genetics offers a real opportunity to improve the profitability and the sustainability of the cow that we produce. We're 100% wholesale. When I came home, I did the sums to see, is that the right breed for what we want to be? So I looked at the land we have, the ability we have of extended grazing or not, as Clayhanger gives you an idea. What
yes,
the land's like.
I felt that on the way here. I came down Clay Lane to.
We have a genuine 200-day winter.
Yeah.
So the Holstein sets itself up for that because it's good for you put lots of forage and byproducts into it, and that can turn it into lots of milk, and the milk contract we're on backs that as well. But can we alter the cow a little bit to be lower maintenance, so a cow that's more efficient? So I'm looking at feed advantages, that ability to turn that forage as efficiently into milk as possible, and pregnancies, and so we've driven for profitability through improved fertility, and we see that with the cows. The cows aren't quite as big as they were a few years ago, and that's something that we've bred for. Smaller cows fit our system much better. They're more we've got more robust cows, I think, and then ultimately, if we get that balance right with feed advantage, they're more profitable. Now, it's two-tier because we drop our on our rankings for carbon footprint. We look at the amount of carbon we take to produce a litre of milk, and we're right in the top quartile for that, and continuing to improve. And that's down to we're starting to change that cow. So it's a more efficient cow, which is important for us in terms of the methane and carbon that comes out, but also it means it's a more profitable cow and sustainable for the business. So we've gone away from I grew up with 65-inch show cows. I did my year out in Canada where that was the holy grail, and it's just not the cow we need or want these days in certainly in our system.
Yeah, the dairy industry has changed a lot over the last 4 or 5 years actually, in that there's been a lot of advancements in genetics, but obviously the focus on environment and sustainability has really pushed that as well, hasn't it?
You look at the correlation with what you breed for in terms of those management traits, efficiency traits, and they're all strongly correlated. The only thing that's kind of goes against that is breeding for that big cow that we probably had a decade ago, and you'll see there's still polarisation within the breeds, and I get that because people want different. And that's why we're not all married to the same wife, because people want different things to suit different systems, don't they? But it's a case now of tailoring that cow to suit your system at home, and I think there's enough variation within our breed to be able to do that. Crossbreeding is obviously something that suits some systems. It just the sums wouldn't add up for our system wants and needs to do that at this point. We use we genomically test everything, so that's a way of tiering our stock and making sure that we're breeding the next generation as efficiently as we can, both from the female and the male side. So
I think you going back to what you said about the school kids, Emma, I think people have an old-fashioned view of farming, don't they? But Andrew's just been saying there, if you sort of tried to explain that to them in a way they can understand about genetics and the improvements that could be made, and it probably wouldn't even occur to them. It wouldn't occur to probably many of us in farming who aren't even in dairy. But it's such a technical industry, isn't it? And those skills are, I guess if you're looking at kids who are looking for a career, there's loads of different ways they could go in farming. They don't have to just come and shovel shit, do they? Which, there's a million ways you could go, isn't there? Well, there is. That's why I've got 4 children. But I'm breeding my own stuff. But there's loads of ways you can go in farming, isn't there? There's lots of opportunities there.
Because when we first started doing the presentation a couple of years ago, it's very much like myth busting about farming, sort of going in and saying, well, you've heard this about milk or you've heard this about meat, but this is the facts about it, and this is how we look after the animals and all this sort of stuff. And now it's very much gone more towards a career type presentation, saying, do you realise there's all these different jobs in agriculture? So if you want to do science, if you want to do medicine, health, there's all these different aspects that you can go in, but actually they can all go back to agriculture, and there's all these different jobs that you can go into. There's so much out there.
And I'm sure the general public, they don't realise that we use sex semen all the time, so that we choose which cows are bred to for rearing heifer replacements, and we rear all our replacement heifers in a farm down the road who rears them for us, because we haven't got room here. But there's a sale market for all the beef calves, it's a whole entity business.
Yeah. Do you sell all your beef calves?
Yes.
Yeah. And we have different buyers for, depending on what the breed is and what the sex of the calf is. We have different people lining up, if you like, for their stock. So that's good.
Well, they're short of them at the moment. That's why they're desperately short of them.
Yeah, it's good or bad times, we've always had buyers for it. So hopefully people are happy with the stock they've had from us, and we sell a lot of milking stock, and the best thing I find is the repeat buyers, because that means that the cows have gone on and done well for them, because they want to come back and buy again. So that's
Yeah, so I buy a lot of calves in from dairy farms, and yeah, you're quite right. If you have
Stop
sort of
the
any
black
ongoing,
mark.
yeah, you do because you want to buy from people have reared those calves right in the first 2 weeks of their life. So if you've got repeated buyers, you must be doing something right with the calf rearing.
I hope so.
Just at this moment in time, they've gone up so quickly, the price value of calves. This last 3 months, they've put easily £100 head on, and you're telling your buyers, well, you know, they are such and such in the market, you know, and they do appreciate it. But, you know, you just got to go with market values, really.
Oh, you can't argue with it. That's
No.
It's market forces, isn't it? They're desperately short of them.
Beef calves they're absolutely on fire at the minute. Beef.
And I think the people who buy from us appreciate the fact that they come straight off our farm. They haven't been through a market, so there's less stress on the animals. And
So what about the next generation then? Are you I know we mentioned that you think that you should always sort of get away from the farm for a few years. Are you thinking that any of your kids might want to take on the farm, or
So there's
long term, or are you
we've
not
got
thinking about that yet?
4 girls between us, and they've all, like most of them now, have been in the milking parlour having a go, helping with calves, doing various different jobs. But I think, so the oldest are picking their options at the moment. I think we're very keen to,
Let them do what they want
Yes.
to do. And it's like me, you know, if they want to come back to it, I'd hope there's always a place for them to say, you know, that next generation. And if it isn't, then, you know, we you know, I would hate to be in a position that we're forcing. Well, I just wouldn't, you know, condone forcing.
You see so many people that have gone out of farming for 10 years, no end of them, and then they get to 35, 40, and they've come back into the business, like yourselves, for instance, and they've been really successful and enjoy it. But it does them good to go, really.
go away,
go their own way for a while.
get an education,
Totally agree.
do something else, and then
Not forced into this.
Yeah, my children be sounds like the same age. My eldest is 14, and we are exactly the same with our girls. It's if they want it, they'll find their way to it, and I'm not interested in pushing them at all. But because it's the road to unhappiness, I think. You see it a lot, don't you? Some people they're kind of pushed into it and they end up very unhappy. So I think they've got to find it and love it, haven't they? Yeah.
such an expensive business to get into, though. I mean, Dennis and I have, before it became fashionable to think about trusts and things, set up so that nobody has to buy anybody out, because you just can't afford to carry on farming if you've got that amount of finance to find nowadays. So we hope there's a farm still there for them if they want to do it in the future.
Yeah, okay. British Farming Awards, you were finalists in the Family Farm Business of the Year. Is that what Family Farm Business of the Year? What did that mean to you? Was it just a good night out? Was it an opportunity to sort of celebrate some? I ask this because I often think that we don't celebrate our own successes enough in farming. Maybe we all work very hard, and you're all so busy that you don't kind of get the chance to ever think about it much.
And I tell you, this is a really good point, because we spend a lot of time beating ourselves up when something goes wrong. That's takes over everything. When something goes well, it's like, all right, okay, let's move on to the next thing.
You do, don't you? You don't have time.
And that's one thing about the award dinner, was taking us all out of our comfort zone, if you like, and putting this around a table. It was a good catch up on the night, and it was interesting seeing so many different sorts of businesses and approaches rewarded, and I thought that was pretty.
And it was
cool.
good to see so many farmers together.
Yeah.
We've been to the Dairy UK dinners, and there's no farmers there. It's all the other parts of
Wider
the business.
industry, yeah.
They don't include the farmers. We're like below their level. But it was good to go to the awards dinner that we were all farmers together.
Yeah.
And we all felt more part of it.
And I guess it's a it's a success for your wider team as well, isn't it? The people who work here and the people who suppliers and vet, and everybody's involved. There's a lot of people behind the success of a family farm, isn't there?
You can't. Yeah, you've got to have good partners in terms of what you're trying to do, and buy into what you're trying to do as well. That's not trying to sell you something all the time. Trying to work through whatever your solutions are. So.
It's such so many businesses involved in agriculture, electricians, and the guy that repairs the parlour and all one after the other, there's a hell of a lot of subsidiary industries, isn't there?
Well, even helping here, because we rely, we've got a superman who's been here nearly 50 years, who's the mainstay of the working outside part of it, but Emma's HR here, and she has a list of relief milkers, and I don't know how she keeps the rota up to date, but all they want to do is to come on the farm, milk and go. They're not interested in anything else, so we have to cope with all the rest of it.
Do you manage to find staff okay? Because that is a problem in
challenging.
Some sections of the industry. Found that difficult?
It's been, there's various times it's been very challenging. At the moment we're mostly okay, but it's one of the many challenges I think we have as farming, because nobody wants to do the unsociable hours, getting mucked up every day, twice a day sort of thing. There's so many excuses as well why people can turn in. Why don't you just, I don't want to, rather than, my car broke down, or I overslept, or I didn't switch my alarm on.
Fire alarms got off in the street.
Right. Yeah.
Book off them.
Yeah, various different excuses that have been
and
used.
We pick names up off social media. There's a farmers forum, isn't there? And if they ever say anonymous, you tend to think, have they been here before?
Yeah, I suppose is that one of the advantages though, of having lots of people around? So is it easier to find? Because if you're quite an isolated farm, that can bring its own challenges. It's good in some ways because you're not bothered, but
although one of our relief milkers travels an hour to get here, doesn't he? In his truck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
He is keen as, but he just wants to work. And this is where generalisations come in. He wouldn't be Gen Z. He'd be Alpha, is it now?
I can't keep up.
But anyway, they say, "Oh, these lads don't want to work anymore." And this guy, all he wants to do is work. He said, "All I want to do is work and earn money." And that sort of mentality, everyone says, "Well, you don't get that anymore in the youth." I absolutely see it in him. He's always here early. For a 4 o'clock start, milking. So think about what time he needs to get up.
Yeah, wow.
And he's just keen as mustard. So we don't get them all like that, but it's it's key. It's key for us to nurture him.
There are lots of. If you find them, there are lots of really keen, hard-working young people, aren't there?
I can remember when I was doing a lot of relief milking, I used to go to one farm about 4:30 a.m. and the police pulled me up one morning, and it was only a mile from the farm, and I got out of the car. I hadn't been drinking, nothing like that, and I met this Bobby, and I said, "Where are you off?" He said, "I'm just going milking over there." So I said, "You want to come with us for an hour?" To this Bobby, he said, "Bugger off."
Yeah, okay. Are you, despite the challenges, and we've talked a little bit about those, are you optimistic about the next kind of 5-10 years of dairy farming in general and this business?
Population is going up.
Yeah.
99% of people have dairy in their fridge.
Well, I think dairy's coming back now. After a few years of kind of fake milks, I think dairy's on the rise
and they're
again.
changing a little bit. Milk consumption directly is sort of stagnant, but we're seeing cheese and butter increase. It has to be a positive part. The bit is getting our way through our own sort of regulations put in on ourselves. Some right, some wrong, but it goes back to what I said before. Either deregulate us and let us get on with it with the lowest common denominator, or set the standards which we which we largely agree with, but make sure that all of it that you're bringing into the country is on the same system. It's like the old arguments about GM and now gene editing. Well, we don't want to do it in the EU or the UK, but then we'll import it from overseas anyway. You've got to be consistent in terms of that food you're taking to your customer. So it has to be positive, but I think there'll be some challenges to get to that positivity.
What about you, Emma?
I was speaking yesterday about the fact that we're not going to meet the demands of the milk production. Milk consumption is rising so much in the world that we're actually going to not meet that going forward. So it's got to be positive for a dairy farmer, but it's just how we sort of marry those two up. The demand, our sort of system in the UK, it's sort of the direct contracts are there for the supermarkets. It's how do they evolve into something else now that helps with the farmer.
We do seem to be the bottom of the food chain as far as prices to us concerned. I was reading online yesterday, the Hut Group was struggling with their profits this year because the cost of whey powder had gone up so much, and they produce all these protein shakes for people working out and things. So we are very important to such a lot of industries, not only to consumers of raw dairy products, that it's about time the supermarkets woke up to the fact that they just need to pass a bit more of the income down to the bottom of the food chain.
And there's more sort of reports about milk being better for you, particularly in terms of cancer and all those sort of things, that we just need to do a better job of marketing ourselves. We have a great story to tell, particularly family farms that have been around for generations, and it's how we go out and sell those messages to consumers. We've got chimney pots all around us, how we go and sell to them, and they realise that it's coming from a farm close to them rather than just buying from a supermarket.
What worries me about the future, you've got to have you want a sensible price for your products, because there's so much reinvestment needed. I mean, the thing you've got to do, reinvestment is, you can't do it without getting this proper income, can you?
You can't. Well, last year cash flow was so tight as well, wasn't it, in 2024?
And there's so many farmers selling up, and the average age of farmers. I mean, you've got to look at it, and the young ones can't afford to get into the industry in a lot of cases. So we need to look after these two.
I remember when I was a young one.
But for the farming industry, we're very young. I went to that NFU meeting I mentioned last night, and on Anglesey, I was probably I'm 46. I was probably the youngest person there by about 20 years, and that's its own problem, isn't it? It's its own. Yeah. All right, so we've got a special guest appearance by the dog there in the background. He's telling us that it's time to wrap this up, so we're going to end there. But thank you all so much. It's been a brilliant discussion. When we got here, we said to Emma that the two previous episodes have been fantastic, so there's no pressure on, but you've all absolutely nailed it. Brilliant. And well done for everything you've achieved over the last number of years. I'm sure it hasn't been easy, as you mentioned, Dennis, but it's been brilliant to talk to you all, and thank you very much for having us.
Cheers. Cheers.